All right, good morning. Good morning to everyone. Good morning to everyone that's listening to our podcast show here from the Mushkegowuk office in Timmins, Ontario. Oggi mi mistega do trek, we hanga do tek that the bugetta and so my speech to Minabak. And I take a share back with Terminabandi to Higa ship back to Timmins and the state of Tamik. With Terminigi Shigagi ship, you are key Piggy Shark, with 3 Piggy Shark ship. Mittewa si skattuge pukumuse mittewa puka putni teke sagak ega tebina kuse ga bechtina kusuge kama sabus kege chikne standi teke ni teke kana tumu suchik mina kusuge ni teke kanta hibane chike kone kenstu kuttagi Ochik ma Mr. Good morning Mr. Good no bugin haga dos tektan de bugetta ego muga speech mabinabak and also muga dos chikatik ego matibatsumun. Okay, again, good morning to everyone. Welcome back to our show, weekly show we have here on Mushkegowuk podcast as we talk about all kinds of issues, updates, or even information sessions. And this morning we have a lady that's going to be talking about an Indian boarding homes class action information session. So in terms of that, we'll let her introduce herself. I'm just looking at my notes. Okay, so in terms of that, so I'll let her introduce herself and we'll take it from there. Good morning, Pamela.
Good morning, George. Thank you so much for having me. I'm sitting here in the beautiful Moose and Me here in Moose Factory. I'm here for the next couple of days. As you've described, I'm talking to people and assisting them with the Indian Boarding Homes class action. So thanks for having me on your podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Yes, for sure. Welcome to our show. And it's not every day we get information on in terms of what's happening, like past history stuff. Like, it's good to know that there's help out there, that people will know how to proceed with this Indian boarding homes, but it's not that's not the only thing. There's also other things that you're working on in terms of that. We'll get into that in a few minutes, but I'll let you take it from here, and you can go ahead and we'll get back to you in a bit.
Wonderful. So I'll let us maybe start with talking about the Indian boarding homes claims process. That is a class action claims process that is now going. It started last August, and it's open until February of 2027. So I'll run through some of the particulars about that. I am an independent lawyer. There is legal assistance in this class action claims process, helping people with their applications at no charge. So that's what I'm doing. I'm getting out into communities and meeting people and helping them with their applications. I will be talking as well, as you had mentioned, George, the second class action that it will now have a claims process opening later this fall, we expect, is the Indian Hospitals class action, and that has to do with 33 federal hospitals run across the country by Indian Affairs, and the two hospitals that would be, I think, where many people, I believe, in this area, this James Bay area, would have attended would be the Moose Factory Indian Hospital, which was is eligible in the class action claims process up until 1981, as well as the Sioux Lookout Indian Hospital. So I will be talking about that a little further on, but now I guess I'll begin, as you said, about the Indian boarding homes claims process. And just briefly, my background is I've been a lawyer for about 35 years. I've worked in First Nations for the past, going into 20 years doing various types of work, but mainly these historical abuse class actions. I worked in the residential school claims process for 8 years, the Indian Day School claims process for the past 4 years, and there were a lot of problems in that claims process, and a lot of people didn't have assistance, and so that's one of the main reasons why in this new class action, the boarding home claims process, there is legal assistance at no charge. So I'm an independent lawyer, and I am assisting people with the applications. Just to talk a little bit about what the Indian Boarding Homes program was, that was a program created by the Government of Canada. Indian Affairs was involved in, students having to leave their communities and placing them in private homes, to go out to school. So for the purposes of attending school up to, the end of the grades, grade 12. I'm not sure about 13, grade 12 for sure, which is mainly the time frame, but certainly when I'm helping people, I am putting in grade 13 as well. And so this program, and sometimes Indian Affairs delegated it to the band or to education authorities or to tribal councils. So during all those years, between 1951 and up to June of 1992 is the eligibility period. Indian Affairs was behind the program, and for students attending often for their high school years, because there tended to be day schools in these communities up to certain grades, 7 or 8 or whatnot, and then students went out for the higher grades, and Indian Affairs was responsible for paying the landlords or the guardians while students stayed in their homes while they were attending school. So that is the time frame between 1951 up to June of 1992 that Canada is accepting responsibility for placing students in boarding homes. For the time period after June of 1992, people can still apply, but the onus is on them to prove that it was Indian Affairs that was placing them. So I'm working with people, that were placed in boarding homes up to June of 1992. And so there's no charge for me assisting people with the applications. Canada has set aside a legal fund to pay lawyers a 5% legal fee on the Category 2 application, but I'm helping people with both applications. There are many people that have already done their Category 1 application come to me, to assist them with the Category 2 application. So either way, and as I say, there's no, I'm not charging, and no payment or anything will come out of your compensation. There is a separate fund that Canada has set aside for this. Now, would you like me to talk a little bit about the claims process, George, and how that works?
Yes, I was just going to mention, I was going to actually ask that question to you, but so if you know how long claim process will take, maybe go ahead and tell us.
Certainly. Yeah, and this claims process differs a little bit from the day schools claims process, where there was just one application. And that was one of the problems with the day schools process. Many people checked off the 10,000 and thought they could come back and claim a higher amount or further compensation for harm and abuse. But with it being just one application, the claims administrator in Canada said, no, you've already put in your application. So with this claims process, there are 2 applications. One is called the Category 1 application. And the main information in that application, besides IDs required and the status card, and they're paying payment directly into people's bank accounts. So the claims administrator asks for, a bank deposit form or void check. But the Category 1 application is about when you were in a boarding home, where, what school you went to, information like that will enable them to look in Canada's boarding home records and verify and confirm, that someone qualifies, that they're eligible. So that Category 1 application, when I'm working with someone, we're doing those Category 1 applications, getting them in quite quickly, submitting them through the claims administrator's electronic portal, because the claims administrator presently is taking about 10 months to process, people's Category 1 applications. And so they look in the records and confirm, Canada's records that they paid the guardian, under the Indian Affairs Boarding Homes Program. And if so, you get approved in that Category 1 application, and there's a $10,000 payment. So that's the first application. And then there's called, and so anybody eligible, as I said, is anyone that was placed in a private home between September 1951 to June of 1992 for the purpose of attending school. Estate claims are allowed in this claims process. That's for any former boarding home student who was placed in a home during those same years, 51 to 1992. But if they've passed away, their family or their executor of their will, or someone who's charged with the administration of their estate, can make a claim in the claims process for them, but only if the person passed away on or after July 24th, 2016. So any former boarding home student who's passed away and they passed away before that date, then a claim can't be made for them. So I'm assisting people with estate claims. They can be a little bit more complex, but again, anyone who passed away on or after July 24th, 2016, their administrator of their estate, family member, can make a claim for them. So that's the Category 1 application. Now I'll talk to you some, George, about the Category 2 application. Any questions about that Category 1 application, George?
No, I was just gonna ask. So, do people actually need records of their attendance, or will they do that for?
Well, in the day school claims process, I was able to write ahead to Archives Canada and get their day school records, but this process is a little bit different this way. We can't write ahead or write to Archives and seek boarding home records. They're all contained sort of with Canada's records review team in this class action. So records aren't necessary for the first application, although, if you have school records, that would be helpful. Sometimes, we're getting letters back from the claims administrator saying we can't find so-and-so in the records. Do you have any further information? So when that happens, I'm helping people to get their school records or any witness statements from people that, knew that they were in a boarding home, that kind of thing. Not necessarily putting that in with the first application, because we're hoping and assuming that they'll be found in the records. It's only when the claims administrator comes back in a few cases and says, we don't see them in the records, can you give more information?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And so now with the Category 2 application, when someone's approved and it's confirmed that they were in a boarding home, then, this Category 2 application applies. You don't have to do it at the same time as the Category 1. But sometimes, when I'm helping people, sometimes I do both their applications at the same time. We don't always have to rush to put the Category 2 application in. Sometimes it can wait if people want to take further time to reflect and think about, any mistreatment or harm or abuse or any, negative experiences they had in the boarding home. But that's what this Category 2 application is about. It is about incidents of harm or abuse or mistreatment in any of the boarding homes you lived in. And this compensation goes up to a maximum of $200,000. And that's for the highest levels of the worst incidents of harm or abuse. And this is a private process. So, the claims administrator doesn't reach out to verify these incidents or investigate or look for witnesses. Your truth is your truth in your application, and everything is kept private and confidential. And it's a closed claims process. And it's not just about any mistreatment by the boarding home landlords or guardians. It can be anybody in the boarding home, other boarders, family members of the landlords, visitors that come in. I sometimes hear that, sometimes boarding home landlords were drinkers and they had parties, and sometimes people came into these boarding homes and were drinking, and sometimes they, caused harm or abuse to boarding home students. So it's about harm or abuse or mistreatment by anyone, in the boarding home. The claims settlement agreement refers to in the boarding homes. The application says while you're in the boarding homes program. So many people ask, well, what about in the schools? I know that Canada's taking a position that, in the schools that was under the province. So the focus really is in the boarding home or anything connected to or related to the boarding home. And now this Category 2 application, which I'm also helping people with, often I'm doing people's both applications, Category 1 and Category 2. Sometimes people have already done their Category 1 application, and they come to me and help me assist them and work with them in doing their Category 2 application. And so I'm happy to do that as well. This Category 2 application sets out 5 different levels of payment for anyone who suffered harm or abuse or mistreatment. Those levels are Category 2A, or Level 2A is $10,000. 2B is $50,000. 2C is $100,000, and the higher levels of 100, and then 2D is 150,000 compensation, and 2E, the maximum is $200,000. Those higher levels of compensation at 100 or 150 or 200,000 relate to any incidents of either abuse or harm of a physical nature, somebody being rough or hurting you, or physically abusing you or assaulting you, and also any incidents of a sexual nature, even any attempts of sexual abuse can be in that higher level. And so those are the types of incidents in the 100, 150, and 200,000. And the claims administrator, when they're assessing the Category 2 application, in reading about the incident, they give compensation based on the highest level. So maybe an incident's described in one home where, for example, you were deprived of food, so maybe 2 or more incidents where you were hungry, or the guardians didn't give you enough food, or you had to skip a meal, or they just didn't feed you much in the boarding home. Things like that or unpaid labor. Those are examples under the $50,000 category, but there are a number of different types of incidents listed under each level. But let's say, for example, someone talks to me about incidents in the home of that nature, as they say, deprived of food or having to do unpaid labor while living in the boarding homes. And then let's say they also talk about, incidents of sexual abuse. 2 or more incidents, let's say, of maybe, severe sexual abuse, significant sexual abuse, which does include, touching, and depending on the nature of it, could be that maximum 200,000. So with a Category 2 application like that, the claims administrator would read, each of those incidents, and because the incidents described of sexual abuse, would be the highest at 200,000, that would be the highest compensation. That's what would be, sought in the application, and that's what would be the payment or the compensation made by the claims administrator. So they don't take all the different incidents and add them together. It's out of all the incidents that are described, or even if there's one incident described, what is the highest level, and that's how compensation is provided in this Category 2 application. And if you want me to sort of mention the timing about that as well, then George, as I said, the Category 1 takes longer because they have to send it to Canada's Records Review Team. But once the Category 1 is approved, then they move on to the Category 2 application. If it's submitted, or if it's not submitted, then, if people come to me and their claim in their Category 1 has been approved, or, anyone I'm helping, I've either got their Category 2 application submitted already, or if not, then once their Category 1 is approved, then we can finalize their Category 2. It just depends on how people would like to proceed. But the timing of the processing of the Category 2 application by the claims administrator is a time frame of 6 to 8 months. So that's what the claims administrator is estimating presently, is 6 to 8 months to process the Category 2 application.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good to know. It's a lot of information there. So, yeah, in terms of, so anytime issues come up that may have inflicted some sort of trauma on people,
Mm-hmm.
is there help those who may need it after completing the application too? If so, that where would they get that help from? If they do need it, just in case.
Yes, and that's absolutely right, George. I mean, these claims processes and this boarding homes claims process, especially that Category 2 application, these are difficult for people. People are bringing up traumatic memories, many, memories that have been buried, and people have, tried to heal from or to work through. And, I worked in the residential school claims process, as I indicated, in day schools as well. And we, learned a lot about, how the brain works, how memories can kind of come out over time, but also, the buried memories and how difficult it can be to bring these out. And so, working with people in a trauma-informed way and understanding, and being sensitive to that is very important. in terms of counseling and support for people going through this process, in this process, what is provided by, I guess, the government in this claims process is what's called the Hope for Wellness Helpline. And so there's a phone support line. It's a toll-free number right across Canada. And counselors, Indigenous and First Nations counselors are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so that Hope for Wellness Helpline, I'm happy to give that toll-free number. It is 1-855-242-3310. And so I've had a number of people that I've been assisting. I always tell people about that, that you may have further memories, or you may have, this isn't easy to talk about, and it's difficult trauma and to bring out. Many people that I've been assisting have reached out, to that Hope for Wellness helpline and have found it helpful, have found it supportive. There's also a website for it too. It's www.hopeforwellness.ca. So people can go on that, but you can also chat online as well if you're good at typing and good on the computer, and you can, talk to someone that way as well. Sometimes when I'm coming into communities, and that's what I'm trying to do a lot in doing this work, is getting out to communities and helping people that maybe aren't, good on the computer, because a lot of this application process is computer-based, and it's, based through the claims administrator's website, and the applications are on there and that kind of thing. But I'm trying to get out to communities and be face-to-face with people and be supportive, in helping them do these applications. There's can be a lot to them in the sense that, IDs and things like that have to be included, signing pages done properly and all that kind of thing, because if the I's aren't dotted well or T's aren't crossed, essentially, then that can hold up or delay, people's applications, because the claims administrator has to come back and say, oh, we need you to sign this, and things like that. So I really enjoy coming to communities. I've been doing it, for the past 15 years, from when I was working with residential school survivors. I love meeting people face to face, but also just being with them, sitting with them and talking to them, and, giving them that support as they go through the process and answering their questions and all of that as well. When I don't, I can't get to every community, and so when I don't get to community, a lot of people will call me. I have my toll-free number, which I'm sure you'll be posting, but it's an 855 toll-free number as well. And sometimes people will call me, or we'll also do a virtual meeting as well, and I can help people with their applications that way as well. I take, all the information, and then I type people's applications and send them to review and sign, and I make sure they're all done, properly and completely, and I submit it through the claims administrator's portal, which kind of gets that, especially Category 1 claim moving right away, and we get a claim number right away. But that support is really, really important. I go to British Columbia a fair bit, into the communities there, and often times I collaborate with the Indian Residential School Survivor Society, and they provide counselors who come into communities with me and do provide some emotional and cultural support as people are working through. So, I do collaborate and work with the communities. We talk about that, if there are resources like that in communities, and sometimes that, that's arranged ahead. So it really just depends on the communities that I come into, and, in collaborating with them and what resources they have. But certainly anyone I'm working with, and it's even on the phone as well, and I send them emails or send them a letter, and I make sure that they have that information about that Hope for Wellness helpline.
Well, good. That's very good. Thank you for all that information. But perhaps if you're done with this one that's boarding homes, if you want to continue with the hospital one, but by all means, if you're not done, go ahead.
Yeah, no, and that's, I will move on to that. I just wanted to finish up with respect to boarding homes, is that the claims process is open until February 22nd, 2027. So that's the timeline during which people have to get their claims applications in. So I'm continuing to go out to communities. As I started out by saying, George, I'm here in beautiful, the council here, just outside Moose Factory community, and I'm staying in Moosonee, and so I'm seeing people while I'm here until Saturday here. I'm scheduled, and I'm very excited about attending in Kashuan next week for the whole week. I'm there Monday to Friday, and I believe it's the Education Center boardroom where they have me set up. I'm going to be doing an information session there, like I did here yesterday at the council office, and last evening in Moosonee I did an information session with these same presentation slides and all of that. So I'm going to be starting out in Kashuan tomorrow, doing that information session, and at the same time I am talking about the Indian Hospital's claims process as well, which isn't open, but I'm starting to give people information about that. I'm hoping as well I'm certainly interested in coming to the other communities. I hope to be reaching out to Attawapiskat as well as Fort Albany and the other council communities here. I love traveling into the communities, and so I'm really hoping to get into those communities as well, and for people to contact me from there and to be out helping people, or if I don't, for the communities that I don't get to, or if people miss me when I'm here or there, they can call my office and I can assist them that way. So certainly, in terms of now the Indian Hospitals class action, and that's the boarding homes class action class counsel was and is Klein Lawyers out of Vancouver. And they're also involved in this new Indian Hospitals class action as well. So they're now releasing information about, and there are a couple of other firms that also partnered with them in this Indian Hospitals class action. So information is starting to come out about it now. The claims application process has not opened up yet. The last that I read and talked to class counsel about it was supposed to be the end of October. That isn't firmed up yet. The claims, the class action was approved by the court in June, and there was an opt-out period, and then the claims process will open up. So we'll see that and learn more about the opening up of that over the coming months. I hope and expect that it will be, before the end of the year, so we're kind of waiting to hear about that. But certainly, quite a bit of information is out there. The settlement agreement, is out there, and some of the information about it. And so it will be similar to boarding homes in that, and this is only the second time, so boarding homes is the first class action where legal assistance is available at no charge. And now this Indian Hospitals claims process will be the same. So I will be assisting people in this one as well, and I am starting to take names and contact information for people about this, and I'll be reaching back. But certainly many people that I'm helping with, helping with in the boarding homes claims process, many of them from these areas were also, did attend or did go into one of these hospitals. So this is a class action. The Indian Hospitals class action is a class action again against the federal government. Indian Affairs ran 33 hospitals across the country called Federal Indian Hospitals, and the time frame is generally about the early 40s, I think, through to 1981, I believe, is the last time frame or the eligibility period. And so it varies by hospital what years the eligibility period is up to, but I can tell you for the hospitals that pertain to this James Bay region, these coastal communities would be the Moose Factory Indian Hospital as well as the Sioux Lookout Hospital, and their time frame does go up to the latest eligibility up to 1981. So yeah, the time frame of the hospitals overall was 1936 to 1981, where the federal government segregated Indigenous patients to attend just in these hospitals. Many of them began as tuberculosis hospitals, and then they were expanded to generally sort of, these racially segregated hospitals. In these hospitals, like residential schools, like day schools, like boarding homes, many people did suffer abuse in these hospitals, physical or sexual or psychological abuse, neglect, and unsafe conditions. And so there is an eligibility period, as I described, up to 1981 for the two hospitals that I think would be more pertaining to community members here in the James Bay coastal communities. And state claims as well are allowed in this claims process. The time frame is for anyone who passed away on or after January 25th, 2016. So it's similar to the time frame For boarding homes, it's a little bit earlier though. It's January 25th, 2016. So anyone who passed away on or after that date, if they were in one of these hospitals up to 1981, then their family member or state administrator or executor can make an estate claim in this upcoming Indian Hospitals claims process. There is a list of the Indian hospitals, federal Indian hospitals, and that will be up. The other two that are in Ontario, I believe, is Manitowoc Indian Hospital. It's eligible up to 1962, and I believe it's called the Squaw Bay Indian Hospital. I believe as well that was in Ontario. That's only eligible up to the years of 1953, but certainly the Moose Factory and the Sioux Lookout Indian Hospitals are eligible between 1949 to 1981. I can talk, George, if you'd like, about some of the compensation or the compensation piece. As I say, the applications aren't out, but certainly in the settlement agreement, it does set out the levels of compensation and the Schedule B kind of harms and abuses that are included. If you'd like me to talk about that a little bit, I'm happy to do that.
Yes, for sure.
Okay. And I always, like to, particularly when we talk about these compensation pieces and the levels, they are very descriptive, and it is really important that people have a trigger warning because they are quite descriptive about the types of abuse. I won't go into that in too much detail. I'll talk about it generally as I have about the boarding homes category 2. It does the compensation piece or part of this Indian Hospitals class action claims process does look similar. There's level 1, which is 10,000, level 2, which is 50,000, level 3, which is 100,000, level 4, which is 150,000, and then the highest level of compensation of $200,000 is at level 5. And level 1, is more about verbal types of harm, sexual comments, or unreasonable acts of discipline or punishment, or verbal abuse like belittling or humiliation, threats, and sometimes, one incident or maybe of unreasonable confinement that's unrelated to medical treatment or being forced to consume alcohol or illegal substances. Things like that fall under the level 1, $10,000 compensation. Level 2, again, with each level and the compensation going higher, there's an increase sort of in the type of trauma and the type of abuse and that kind of thing. So level 2, the $50,000 does relate to various things such as maybe any new photographs being taken or anybody exposing themselves, fondling or kissing, or any, physical assault that might cause a minor impairment, bruising, black eye, that kind of thing. And again, witnesses are not necessary, in describing these kind of things, because oftentimes, as we know, these abuses and harms took place behind closed doors, and people didn't see it happening, and especially a lot of people were children in these hospitals and that kind of thing. It's important to understand that this compensation process and this class action relates to intentional harm or abuse. It doesn't relate to medical treatment. So if a doctor or a nurse, made a mistake medically, that's more of a medical malpractice negligence claim, which isn't covered in this. This is about intentional acts of harm and abuse, which is the case, with these historic abuse claims. I certainly, I know that in the day school claims process, I certainly help people with their claims that had, now I'm talking about the day schools, had, teeth taken out or removed by day school dentists, and oftentimes these were very, very painful, traumatic experience because they didn't do freezing or things like that. And so in the day school claims process, that was certainly a claim that I helped many people with, and those were high-level claims, in the $150,000 range. As physical abuse, what they've set out, though, in this class action is that they've excluded extractions of teeth. So it reads 1 or more incidents of physical assault causing minor impairment, but then it states excluding extractions of teeth or minor impairment or disfigurement that's the result of medical treatment. So there's where they've sort of they're excluding that type of thing in this hospital's claims process. Level 3, as we get higher up to the $100,000 range, that's where it does describe certain types of sexual abuse, one incident, and also more reoccurring sort of physical assaults that might have caused a minor impairment. So that's under the $100,000 category. Then when we get to the $150,000, it gets again into more detail about different types of sex abuse and one or more physical assaults that cause permanent or long-term mental or physical impairment, injury, or disfigurement. That's wording that is used in the boarding homes claims application, and so I'm certainly helping people that had even just one assault or even one assault, can claim that higher level of compensation if it did cause, some long-term issues. And so that's the level 4 compensation. And then the last one, the highest level, relates to 2 or more incidents of, serious sexual abuse or any pregnancy, that happened in a hospital resulting from a sexual assault, or physical, assault that caused permanent loss of mobility or brain injury. So that's the most serious level of compensation or category in the Indian hospitals claims process. And so, as I was saying, George, the claims process is not yet open, but when it does open, the claims deadline period it will last a period of 30 months. So once it opens, it'll be a 2.5-year claims period, which has been, quite consistent with these claims processes over the past few years. That's the time frame, because it can often take a while for word to get out about these class actions, and especially with lawyers helping, and there aren't a lot of lawyers across the country that are assisting in these claims processes, so it can take some time to get out to communities, or for people to hear about lawyers and reach out to them, or even community members that are helping with these claims applications. So 30 months or 2.5 years is the time frame which it will stay open for people to submit their applications. And what you had mentioned earlier as well, George, in terms of support, there's the same support. The Hope for Wellness support line and website is going to remain open, remain available for anyone as well going through the Indian Hospitals claims process.
Well, that's good. A lot of information for sure. You're probably having a lineup of calls at the moment.
Yeah, and I'm not answering a lot of questions because not everyone is, receiving full information. They might be receiving bits and pieces. So people will call me and ask me questions, and I'm happy to share, any information that I have.
I'm sure there is other places to get forms for this day school, boarding homes, and also the whichever is going to come out yet, the Indian Hospitals class action. But in terms of boarding homes applications, do you provide those as well? If somebody said, can I have an application, can I do it myself type of thing?
Well, when I'm traveling in community, I usually come with kind of the shorter parts of the application, and so I don't have the full applications with me when I travel because there are, suitcases and all that kind of thing. And when I do, work with people one-on-one, I sit with them and do their applications and have them sign it, and then I type it all up and send it to them to review and that kind of thing. And but there is the claims administrator's website. So as I was indicating,
Yes.
there everything is claims. The claims process is based on the computer. So there is the claims administrator's website, and there is a phone number as well that you can call and ask them to send you the applications, or especially the category online, right through the claims administrator's website. And on my own website as well, which is www.boardinghomeslegalassistance.com, I have a link to the Claims Administrator's website, and applications can be obtained through that as well. The Claims Administrator's website is www.boardinghomesclassaction.com. And I can also give the Claims Administrator's website for anyone who would like to, do their applications themselves, and have the Claims Administrator mail them out an application. And that website, that phone number is, just looking it up here on my computer. It is, so boardinghomesclassaction.com is the website, and their phone number is 1-888-499-1144.
Okay, we got that.
Yes. And I can't remember if I had given you my office number, but it's 1-855-756-4372.
Yes, we got that as well.
Okay. And as I say, I'm happy to, answer any questions. People are calling the Claims Administrator and finding out what the status of their applications, are, and that kind of thing. When I'm assisting people, I am able to give status updates and provide information, as to the status of the processing of their application and all that kind of thing. So, I might meet with people initially and do their applications and all of that, but I certainly stay in contact and let them know how things are going with their application. And when I do receive decisions, because I've certainly been receiving decisions now for people that I've helped from, the beginning of the process, the decision comes to me, and then I reach out and call my client and send an email to them the same day I receive, their decision, because people are waiting a long time for these decisions, and it's, stressful, it's difficult, it's frustrating. We always hope that these claims processes that, things will move faster and all of that, because it's difficult for people to, even participate in these processes and have trust in them and, tell their experiences and bring that all out, and then to have to wait a long time to find out, if they're eligible and then what their compensation is. So, we always like to keep people up to date and follow up with the Claims Administrator, as to how things are going. But certainly at the beginning of this, the Claims Administrator estimated a 6 to 8 month time frame for the Category 1 application, but they're now, because I think they've received close to 20,000 applications, so they are estimating about 10 months for that Category 1 decision.
Okay, that's a lot of information for sure. It also helps a lot when you actually get somebody to help you in terms of, you don't want to miss anything at all in terms of where you're going to put piece by piece in terms and to make it for them to understand how they're processing their application.
Yes, as I said, this is the first time there has been legal assistance at no charge, and in working in these claims processes over the past 15 years, they're difficult, and it's hard for people to talk about or to describe, but even to understand, what might be covered and what might not be, and what words best used to describe and that kind of thing. And so that can really make a difference in people's compensation. The other thing, and this is one of the injustices, because there were, a lot of unfortunate things that happened in the day school claims process. And one of the things was, again, what I indicated, people had put in their application in day schools and not really remembered everything at the time that they put it in, or didn't know that maybe this should be included. And then they went back and wanted to, do a better job on their application, and they weren't allowed. And so, in this claims process as well, once the Category 2 application has been submitted to the Claims Administrator, it can't be changed. You can't change your level. You can't add more information. If you make a mistake, that can't even, be changed. So, having legal support, it can be really helpful. What I often say to people, with the Category 2 is, and let's say they're only remembering a couple of things, but they think they might have more memories that might come out a little bit later, because that's how, progressive disclosure works from suffering from, being subjected to trauma like this at a young age. And so it's important that people have sufficient time to reflect and that, so that, a really good job can be done in their Category 2 application.
Yes, for sure. And in terms of that, even if you don't remember, and all of a sudden you remember, or maybe perhaps you can get an hypnotist. No, just kidding. I watch too many movies.
Yes. Well, but even through counseling, some people, and I've certainly experienced this working with day school survivors as well, sometimes people are working with counselors and then they come to me and say, I kind of worked through this with my counselor and I remembered these things, and, I'd like you now to help me with the application. There's lots of people out there that are really giving support and trying to help people in, in any way that they can.
Yes, for sure. In terms of that, and being honest as well. Being honest is one key for this application process too, isn't it?
Pardon me?
And you have to be honest too, right?
Yes, I mean, it's a truth-based process,
yes,
absolutely.
It is, exactly.
And it's your truth. Yeah, and you describing what happened to you and all of that. But, it's not like a legal process where anyone has to go to court or has to go somewhere and tell their story. It's based on what's in the application. And, the claims administrator doesn't, try to verify it or investigate, because it is private and that kind of thing. So people don't need to worry about that. But certainly it is a truth-based process.
Yes, for sure. But I have a question. Somebody has sent a question, I guess. It's from, I believe she's from where you are at the moment. And she's just asking, will there be a second info session? I'm assuming that's what she's referring to, is where you are. Muslim
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes. I don't have one scheduled, but certainly like last evening where I was in Moosonee, in my hotel, I had a boardroom booked and I did an information session, but it was quite informal. People kind of come in at different times. I'm there. I'm really accessible to people, to meet with them one-on-one and answer their questions. But certainly, I do work with communities, and if I'm there or I was there and people miss the session, sometimes, I'll have it up on my website, or I understand you're going to be doing, George is putting this podcast up through your website and that. And but if someone wants to, if they want to reach out to me while I'm here in community and have questions, or they want to make an appointment with me, I still have time available. And so you can give my office a call at our 1-855 number and set that up. But also, after I leave community, people are welcome to call me, and I still work with people that way as well.
Oh, that's good. That's a informative show, and people certainly watching this will be probably getting more info once we see the website, your phone number, and who you are. We're certainly happy to help with that. And in terms of further communities, if you also want us to help you out in terms of that, we'll be happy to let people know that where you're going next.
Wonderful. I really appreciate that. And I find, there's wonderful communication. People share, posters around about me on Facebook and in the communities. And often when people come meet me, I'll say, how did you hear about me? And they'll say, well, my cousin told me about you, or we read it on Facebook, or things like that. And so I really, really do appreciate people's support, and the opportunities to come to communities and all the sharing around and that people do. I really, as I said, love coming to communities to meet people face to face.
Good. That's we're done. That's it. If you have anything to add?
No, I think, like you say, I've given a lot of information here if people have questions. And again, George, I want to thank you and the council and, the communities that I'm coming to. I'm really honored, and it's a privilege for me to be out doing this work and to come to the beautiful communities.
Okay, thank you very much for having you on our show, Pamela, and we'll keep in touch.
My pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, kasi mingo sa taga gibet siya mo bista gyan mo ta ke na ke gone go ito temero o dite he kai ta te bet te pa ta mas ko bi geskente me ga gibet se mas ne ga no dite he Facebook ai bet ta go ta ga gi wi go get he mo i go ke gone stand ben ta me go mina ni gante he mas ko ta benos ne se tin twist morgen und gegangen ga no mo ta mas ko ta gisten da ne sta Tuosta morgen on tiki peittiin istuttak misseuen hän omat tibät mun gapaget ne kaikki kiskana maa sookupa ne kituutti minuk kiskana tuukameko minukuttekia jään mittänä pipun hepipun kaipin shanku mittänä nisho kaikki kiskana maa hatsukuutti kaikki one week tsukutet taunoak epet kiskana maa hatsik ja koon peikuik takia se peittiin kiskin tsikaattio minä saan kiittää yhtämän takikoina minä kottekaan kiipaket nämä kun mä hosi kun mä kiitä iduttanut me kotjuassa siunanut ja kun minä kotte päätti mun saako mä täytti vähtsikin täytti pehtee yhtämän meno. Okay, guys, thank you very much. Thank you to our guest, Pam, and for next week we'll have somebody else for next week. Anybody that wants to perhaps come on our show, you can certainly email us or perhaps you can put your name and you can call, let us know on our Facebook page, Mushkegowuk Facebook page. Okay, guys, and thank you to Ron for helping me on this podcast. Have a good day and goodbye to everybody.